Hello, I'm Ken Chapman, one of the authors of Safety Beyond the Numbers. My co-author, Tony Orlowski, and I thought that it might be helpful to share with you a brief webinar about this fall's seminar, Leading Safe Outcomes. We wanted to introduce you to some of the key ideas that you'll be hearing at the seminar. And by the way, it's in November, begins on Wednesday night the 15th, ends at noon on Friday the 17th at Chateau Elan, the retreat center there north of Atlanta. Be sure and punch the registration link at the bottom of this slide and sign up. It'll be well worth your time. But let's begin with where your mind probably already is. And that is a question that every executive, every general manager, and every health and safety professional ask at one time or another. And that question can be captured in a single word. Why? Why? Why are our people still getting hurt? After all, we've got a robust compliance program. We compare favorably to the industry. We do well in terms of what OSHA's expectations are. We have a strong lockout, tagout process. We teach safe work practices, and we're always looking for new hazards that might place our people at risk. And yet our people are still getting hurt. This is where we can be of help because we change the paradigm. Compliance becomes no longer the goal you're aiming for, but compliance should be the floor that you stand on. And the goal should be zero injuries, which we describe as the consequence or result of having an ownership culture, which means that you have in place the solid rock, the foundation that every organization needs, a strong compliance program. But you add to that ownership. Keep in mind that I'm going to share with you a statistic that has been true for a very long time. And that statistic is this: 9 out of 10 safety incidents occur when a member of management is not around, which means that if your people are going to go home healthy and whole every day, they must choose to. They must choose to work safely. They must choose to follow the lockout tagout process. They must choose to follow safe work practices. And they must choose to help you identify potential hazards that had previously not been recognized. They must take some sense of ownership. And you get there by creating a cultural expectation. The expectation that everyone in the organization will not only make good choices about their safety, but they will make good choices about the safety of those around them. So let's begin where we need to begin in those key concepts that you'll be hearing more about at this fall's seminar. First, no organization rises above its leadership. This has always been true. The leader sets the pace, and there is a skill set that every leader needs if they are in fact going to lead your people to safe outcomes. Because you cannot have a supervisor or a manager or a GM who doesn't take safety very seriously. They just see it as a check mark to be made on a compliance form and expect to get all the way to ownership. And then, of course, the frontline engagement. We've known for a long time that the key characteristic of an effective frontline supervisor is that she or he engages with the people who report to them. They have a series of never-ending conversations about expectations, particularly safe work expectations. A conversation about how to train that person to meet those expectations. about tools that are appropriate and working to meet those expectations. And then, of course, feedback. The feedback that is praise, the attaboy or the attagirl, but also how to engage in the difficult conversation, particularly the difficult conversation that helps a person decide to work safely because that's in the best interest of the people they're there for. And who are the people that they're there for? Well, let's put it out there. The number one reason that the people who work at your facility come through the gate is what their efforts inside the gate will buy for the people they care about outside the gate. So you want them to take ownership of going home healthy and whole to the people they care about at the end of every shift. And then let's be mindful that what you don't address, you bless. If you want an ownership culture, a supervisor cannot walk past an employee who is not wearing their hard hat and say nothing, because walking by, saying nothing, simply blesses the idea that, hey, I know we say you got to wear your hard hat in this area, but we may or may not expect that consistently. We talk about how you can get there. And then trust and credibility, or the big challenge, and that is the indispensable outlier. The indispensable outlier is a phrase that Tony and I use to describe a person you'll recognize. And who is that person? It is that person who seems indispensable to your operations. Maybe they've been there for 30 years. Maybe they're a maintenance person who has had their hands on every piece of equipment. They've had it apart, put it back together, know it inside and out. You don't know where you'd find someone to replace them. Well, you can have an indispensable outlier in any department or any area of your operations. But the indispensable outlier is not just someone who has great knowledge, great experience, perhaps some tribal knowledge that would be difficult to replace. They're not just someone who has lots of knowledge and experience, but they're also someone who does not champion your safety processes. In fact, sometimes it appears that they disregard them and almost dare you to do anything about it. They don't worry about safe work practices. They're not as alert to lock out, tag out as you know they ought to be. And you know that there are instances in which they knowingly or carelessly place an employee at risk. And you put up with it because the thought is you can't do without them. We will introduce you to a strategy about how to get the indispensable outlier on board or help them find another place to work. And then the relationship between culture and outcomes. The relationship between culture and safe outcomes is fairly straightforward. If the expectation is that the company will create a safe work environment and the employee will partner with them and take some ownership, then you have a culture that supports safe outcomes. But you have to lead them there. You have to lead them to safe outcomes. So let's talk about some of the things that you always face under those contexts. I'm going to offer 3 brief categories to help you think about the folks who work in your particular facility. First of all, there is what we would call the folks who believe that safe behavior is unacceptable. That's right, the folks who think that safe behavior is unacceptable. And your first thought might be, we don't have any of those folks. Everybody knows that safe behavior is acceptable. There's no one who thinks it's unacceptable. But we would beg to disagree. Here's a couple of folks who would fit in that category. The new employee, the person who's only been there for a few days or a few weeks, maybe less than 2 months. Many organizations, perhaps your organization, has them wear a different color shirt or a different color hard hat so that they can be recognized. They should be assumed to be in the red until you have reason to believe that they've moved beyond that they know the environment well enough to understand the risk. The other person that would fit in the red would be the veteran employee. The lady, the guy has been with you for 15, 20 years, and they do a good job, and people like working with them, but you also know that they routinely skate the edges of safety protocols, but you don't say anything. You tolerate it. That person should be considered to be in the red because they place themselves at risk. And then the second level is safe behavior is acceptable. This is that employee who will follow safe work practices. They're certainly going to comply with lockout, tagout. They're going to use the tools you provided to ensure they go home healthy and whole every day. This is what I call the compliance level. And most organizations aim for the yellow category. But what we offer is an opportunity for your organization to move beyond compliance to the green level, where unsafe behavior is unacceptable. So what is the difference between the yellow and the green? The yellow employee is going to watch out for themselves. The green employee is going to watch out for themselves, and they're going to watch out for the people around them, because they come to work every day with an intention of stepping up. And you see that step up ownership mentality in their behavior in at least two ways. It's clear that their attitude is, I will never trade your safety for my comfort or your approval. That I'm going to speak up if I see you not wearing your hard hat and remind you to put it on, even if it makes me a little uncomfortable and it makes you unhappy that I said something. And they also come to work with this attitude. I will make it safe to keep me safe. I welcome every set of eyes that wants to keep an eye on me. Everyone, because the best and the brightest employee can have a bad day. And when this is a cultural expectation, you have an ownership culture that sits securely on your robust compliance program. And you're well on your way to that moment when your people never get hurt. But it affects all of your operations. It has an ever-expanding positive impact, because you see, when people take ownership, they don't just take ownership of safety. They take ownership of everything. They take ownership of every aspect of the business, from their work product to their relationships with fellow employees, even their pride of association. Well, I hope that this brief overview of some, not all, some of the key concepts that we will discuss at this fall's seminar are now on your radar. Please consider joining us at Chateau Elan, beginning on the evening of November the 15th, ending at lunch on the 17th, Friday. Punch that registration link. Come join us.